It's so good to see all of you on the call this evening. We're doing Follow Jesus in Finance, and I know this one is going to be the one you guys really latch on to. So much talent within the Berean. I hope that you've been paying attention to the social media streams the entire day. Facebook, Instagram, and even Twitter. Guys, we dusted off Twitter. Come on. Last Twitter post was like 2011 or something like that, and then you see 2021 is like, what is happening? So we on Twitter, guys. So those of you who haven't been on Twitter in ages, dust off that password, log in there, and retweet. I had to learn the terminology again. Retweet. All right. I don't use Twitter. All right. I'm not the best at social media, but thankfully we do have some people who are brave enough to learn it. So. So we're going to get started, just giving the YouTube family time to come on in the call. Welcome to everybody. We are just a little bit behind time because we had a little bit of a
Pastor,
slide
did you
beginning.
share the YouTube link in the wire?
That's what I'm trying to do as I speak and stall a little bit. This is what you do. You speak kind of slowly and then try to Control C, Control V, and there it is in the wire. So you can, but because we're public on YouTube rather than unlisted, like how you would normally do it, those of you who have subscribed to YouTube channel, if you haven't done that yet, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button and then hit that little bell. I think that still exists. Hit that little bell, and every time Berean goes live with a new video or anything, post a new video or anything, that you'll get a notification. So that's the best way to stay connected to us on our YouTube channel, right? That's automatic. All right. Boy, I know you guys are ready. Do we have Rachel here? If you could get points up there, that'd be awesome. But I can go on what I remember. I know that Emerald is in position number 1, and then Ruby is in second place, followed by Sapphire as it relates to our points for our quiz. And so we did have a quiz last night, so we're going to have a quiz tonight. Can't disappoint the people. Welcome to those who are joined us on YouTube. Really good to have you as usual on there. So all 7 of you watching, please go ahead and say good night so we can see your name, so we can know who you are. Really good to have you on this evening. So I am going to share. Start this presentation. It would be a good idea. That would be a good idea. Let me start it here. All right, and now I am going to share my screen, and this time remember to share my sound. And there we go. All right, so we're gonna get started with tonight's quiz. I kind of rushed this, so I really hope I got this right. If not, forgive me, please. All right, so where are we now? We are here tonight. All right. All right. So I hope you guys are ready. This is time for our Thursday night quiz. And just let's do by way of practice. You know how we're going to go about doing this? You're going to raise your hand. So let's, on the count of 3, raise our hands so that I know the teams are ready. Hopefully we will have Emerald, somebody from Emerald in attendance so they can get some points. I mean, it's a good thing they're out front because Emerald has not been able to get a point for the entire week. So come on, Emeraldians, here's your time, their time. All right, so on the count of 3, we're going to raise our hand. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, raise your hand. Let's see. Oh, Judy, Julia, Adrian, yo, boy. Wow, this is going to be amazing. Malik is on. Good to see young. Listen, guys, can we just give some support, encouragement for Malik, one of our young people? He's been attending every night. Come on, can we just applaud Malik for being on the call? That's fantastic. That's how you lead my brother from the front, man. That is good stuff, Malik. All right, the rest should be on here, and maybe they're on collectively as families. But really good to have you on, Malik. God bless you and your household as well. All right. So hands down. Somebody saying something. Oh yeah, you're good. Hands down. All right. Good. So Fran hand good, and Adrian's reaction that was from the clapping, right? So that should go away soon. There we go. All right, we are clear. All right, you guys ready? You guys ready? Here we go. Here's the first question. Have no idea what it is because I can't see the next screen given this setup. All right. This one is entitled Nope. Category Nope. All right. So here we go. According to Francis Patrick, what Bajan delicacy is a no for her? A. Conkeys. B. Jug Jug. Jug Jug is Bajan, I know. C. South Panasati. Or D. Cuckoo. Oh boy. Where my judges? I kind of stick up a little bit there, boy. Oh, Julia put that down her hand. So I go with Owen. I go with Owen in the corner there first. Owen, my brother, go ahead. Which one was the answer, sir? What's your answer, I should say?
A.
A is the answer given, and is that the answer we are looking for? Yes, that is correct, my brother. We are looking for answer A. Answer A is conkeys. Let's see if we can bring up that clip, which I had up before.
Is a no. So we know it because she said that conkeys.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Excellent question. We have to remember to pray for Francis because she said that conkeys is a no.
There you go. That's the right answer. Well done, Owen. That is 10 points. What house are you in, sir?
Ruby.
That's Ruby. Somebody keep track. That is 10 points for Ruby. There we go. Come on, man. Who's that? That's what I'm talking about, man. There we go. Points for Ruby. Well done. 10 points for Ruby. On to the next question. Hands down, everybody. Everybody hand down. Repeat the process to lower your hand. And on we go. Okay, let me get myself out the way. There we go. Next question. What is the next question? Trying to get some real estate here. Okay, here we go. Category nutrition at home. This is the one I just did, so I don't know if this is right. Which of the following advice is so nice that Carla included it twice in her list of improving your nutrition at home experience? Which of the following advice is so nice that Carla included it twice on her slide? Is it getting family involved, try some new recipes, exercise, or reconnect with family? Deborah and Leon first. What's your answer?
B, try some new recipes.
B is the answer that is given. Is B the answer we're looking for? That is correct. Try some new recipes.
Recipes twice, sorry. That's how much I like food. You try a new recipe twice.
There you go. Well done, Deborah. Deborah, what team are you guys on?
Ruby.
Ooh. Whoa, let's hear those Rubians. All right, Ruby is rolling tonight, boy. That is 20 points for Ruby, 0 for Emerald, 0 for Sapphire. Come on, guys, let's go, let's go. There are 3 more of these, 3 more. Let's go. On to the next question. Out of gas? According to last night's presentation on prayer, what is the fuel for prayerlessness? Is it more prayer? Is it changing your schedule? Is it stopping at Rubis, Saul, or one of the gas stations? Or is it the resurrection of Jesus? Fran, Malik, and Rachel's hand were up before the question was finished. Francis, what's your answer? You gotta unmute, Francis.
Sorry. The resurrection of Jesus.
The resurrection of Jesus, the answer given. Is that the answer we're looking for? That is correct. Very well done, Francis.
So much. And here's it. Start focusing on the person and work of Jesus. Jesus' resurrection changes everything, including our desire for prayer.
Yeah, all right. Well done, Francis. What team are you on?
Sapphire.
Sapphire on fire. So that is 10 points for Sapphire. Very well done. 2 more questions to go. Everybody's hand down, Francis. Everybody hand down. All right. Quizzers are ready. Good. Everybody clear. Here we go on to the next one. Second last. Closing prayer. After last night's presentation on prayer, who closed the meeting in prayer? Is it Deacon Tyrone Lowe, Reverend Roger Paul, Deacon Adrian Greenwich, or C.T. Studd? Andromeda Blunt.
Deacon Adrian Greenwich.
Deacon Adrian Greenwich is the answer. That is correct. Angie,
Lead us,
what?
Lord, through these sessions, and may your Spirit just enlighten us, Lord, as to what you would have us to learn. We want to give you thanks, Lord, for what you're going to do now in and through us, and may your name be glorified in everything. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen, says Angie. Angie, what team are you on?
Ruby.
Ruby! What is going on? Ruby is taking this quiz all week by storm. What in the world? Where is Green Team? All right. Very good, guys. Here's the last one. We got to get out the way because you came for a finance presentation. This is going to be fantastic, guys. I can't wait for it personally. Here is the last quiz question of the night in the category. Wait, what? During Tuesday night's presentation on nutrition, what was strange about Pastor Paul's teacup? It was broken. It was upside down. It was dirty. What teacup? Owen Thompson.
Was
Yep.
upside down.
Upside down.
It was indeed upside down the whole night. Let us show you that clip. I had it upside down the whole night, but I could not find clips of it because how Zoom and YouTube work together. So it was only at the very end when Cecile latched
Amen.
on
Thank you
to
so
it.
much, Deacon Tyrone. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to the call. Do have
What is going on here? What is going on here? There'll be more of that. You stay tuned, pay attention. Don't let me distract you. But we here to have some fun, guys. So those points back to who's that? That's Owen again.
Yep.
What? So Owen is on Ruby, and Ruby has taken what's that? 40 points. Do I have that right? Ruby? 40 points for Ruby, 10 points for Sapphire, and 0 for Emerald. Emerald is being very gracious and loving. We love that spirit of giving all the other teams points. So we will give you a tally at the end of tonight, Rachel. And so we will get that update going into Friday. Okay, without any further ado, we are going to set up the finance team. These guys are so good at what they do, and they have a lot of information to share with us this evening. So join me in welcoming Cecile Reed for this evening's presentation, guys. Let's hear it for Cecile and the panel. All right, all right, all right. Over to you, Cecile.
Thank you, Pastor. Um, we are excited to be here, prayerful to be here as well. We had a wonderful day yesterday, all day prayer at the church, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we had a really great session on prayer at 7 that Pastor led. And so when we start now talking about money and finances, it always makes people feel a little bit awkward and uneasy. And so, what we want to do is to be able to create in this tonight. We've come through it now. We've heard Paul Leacock on Saturday. We Trevor Francis Sunday morning, and Derek Ward Sunday night. Then we talked about missions. Julia did such a great job educating us and informing us about missions. Then we went on to nutrition. Carla, really an expert. You could see from the way she was fielding questions that she really knew her stuff. Then we spent a day dedicating ourselves to prayer. And now we want to talk a bit about money. And we want to talk about it in the context of being Christians and being part of the body of believers. So, when we talked about how we follow Jesus, especially that Sunday morning service, a lot resonated with myself and the other people that are going to be contributing tonight. One of the things that stood out from Pastor Francis's message was talking about forgiveness. And so we're thinking in finance specifically around debt forgiving and debt forgiveness. We think that's going to be an area that will serve you well, but I want to say that the topic is for you. You are not for the topic. So if you want to vary from that, if there's a concern in your heart or in your mind and you want to ask, what better time to ask than now? Because we have an illustrious panel just milled from the congregation here at Berean. So what we're going to start off with is a brief presentation by Brother Tyrone Lowe. Brother Lowe is a financial advisor with almost 30 years experience. He's not only a chartered financial consultant, but he's a certified health specialist. So he has a broad range of insurance and financial planning expertise. He's going to talk a little bit about the realities of debt. And some of us think, we were brought up to believe debt is bad. Some of us think debt is good. We're just going to talk about the reality, without judgment, the realities of debt and how debt can vary as you are at different points in your life. It's called the financial life cycle, but he'll go into that in a bit more and be available to answer questions in that vein. Then we will pass over to Sister Esther Lord Graham, and she is first an ACCA, but then a fellow in the ACCA, which is one of the highest distinctions in accounting from an immensely competitive board of certifications. She is a certified credit executive and is an MBA in financial services. And she will be doing a presentation about debt forgiving and debt forgiveness. And we will talk about how we as Christians approach debt and how we have a Bible-based, a God-centered, a Jesus-centered approach for handling our debt and handling our debts our financial life cycle. After that, I think what we'll have there is we would have framed a conversation for those listening on Zoom and on YouTube to give you some verbal tools to articulate your questions. Again, the topic is set for you. You are not for the topic. Whatever financial question you have, we want to field. And because of that, I'll be moderating those questions for you. If you send them on chat or if you raise your hand, I'll make sure I get to those whose hands are raised. I'm monitoring also on YouTube, so any comments and questions that come in on YouTube, we'll moderate and put to Esther and Tyrone. But we also have available Lucy Critchlow and Harold Codrington to field questions. I don't know if most of you probably know, but our brother Harold Codrington is a retired deputy governor of the central bank, so comes with immense civil service experience in terms of the macro and the micro implications of our economic strategies. Sister Lucy Critchlow is a banking executive, a former banking executive, specifically in retail banking on the loan approval side. So can give us a little bit of an insight into, again, at that macro level, what debt is, how it is viewed from maybe a perspective that we haven't had before. So I hope that you will open your hearts and your minds, and that you will allow yourself to ask the questions that are on your mind. And we've been in prayer about this for some time leading up to this event, and I feel confident that God is going to prayerfully lead us to be able to field those questions and to provide the sort of guidance that is going to send Christians with financial concerns back to the Word in a way that they are sharpened to get what is from the Word and apply it in their lives. So I'm going to turn over to Tyrone right now. Tyrone, if you need any support from me, you know the drill, but I'm going to ask you to turn on your video and your mic. I'm going to go on mute and go from
My goodness me. Good evening to the Berean family. It's my pleasure to be able to give of my limited knowledge to this exercise. Sometime before we started this process, so for the next 10 minutes, I revisit some of the things that I mentioned, and then we take it from there. I'm going to share my slide on debt forgiveness. Hope everyone can see. Hope it's big enough.
Yep,
How are we
we can
doing?
see
Yeah?
you.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Good. Now, what does insurance, that's my background, have to do with debt forgiveness? The harsh reality about life is that insurance deals specifically with money. It is all about money. And in fact, what we in the insurance industry, what we do, we actually attach a money value to you as a human being. We call it the human life value. We also put a value to the assets that you have, your house, your car. We also equate a values to the things that you need in life, education, the things you put in your home. One of the things that people hate to mention as well that we talk about, future needs, including illness, sometimes death. These all have implications. A way insurance put a value to them is because insurance seeks to protect the money value that these things have. In other words, if you didn't have insurance, but you still have a need for these things, it can disturb and disrupt your lifestyle. We put that in something called the financial life cycle that helps you to understand what happens at selective times in a person's life. Can you avoid that? How did I get here despite my well intentions? How can I explain this? Well, let's start then by looking at what happens. I know I can't do all 5 of these, but we have 5 particular periods that we call the phases that a person could pass through in their career. One is the early career, which is about 25 or younger to age 35. Second one is career development, 35 to 50. Peak accumulation, 50 to 58, they're about 62. And then pre-retirement, just 3 years prior to the big date. And then the actual time, my friend, 62 and 66 or older, you are retired. I suspect I won't be able to do all 5, but let's spend some time at the early one and see what's happening here in this early career. Typically, the person is between age, like I said, 25 to age 35. And the person might be married, or if not married, you may be in a significant relationship. You probably have young children. Take note of those things that I put in red. You're still establishing employment patterns, you're changing jobs, you're moving on to better, you don't quite sure what you want to do yet. Moving from boss to boss as you establish, even your education may propel that. You start out with something humble and then you're moving on to better. You are preoccupied with accumulating funds for home purchase, standard things. You're saving for children's education. But you also are aware that death and disability could have disastrous consequences. These two fellows do not discriminate. So you don't have to be the best boy on the block for death to visit you. You don't have to be the sweetest person around for disability to pay you some attention. And when they do, you have financial implications. So protection and building saving for emergencies should be part of this whole period. Over to the other side, I put to you what normally and innocently could put you in debt. What about your marriage? For those of you who are lucky to have a grandfather and a good godmother pass on the wealth for you, congratulations. But some people have to experience some loans to get a good marriage. When I married, a couple of my best men, my groom men left me in debt. I had to pay the porter a couple of dollars for the boys. Well, thank God my wife is still with me. She overlooked that small indiscretion. But the boys left me in debt. Thank God I'm still hanging on. Simple as it is. But who else? Because society put pressure on you. Man, when you can get married, my had the woman ever since trying to get married. So you a little bit of pressure. Do the thing. Lady getting old. Pressure. Mortgage for the home. So you're you're married, you're a young couple, you gotta live somewhere. And we in this part of the world, we want our own home. How we can get a mortgage that costs about $300,000, unless again some person pass on, you need to get yourself in debt. And until you get that debt, sometimes you have to rent. If you are familiar with paying rent, miss your rent for 2 months or 3 or 4. Debt, my friend. In fact, the actual paying of the rent every month is a debt. Death. When death comes along, it creates an instant bill. And don't please tell me about the macaroni box or the red herring box. Those things don't turn these days because whoever has to look after you has to find money from somewhere. Death always put people, the family that survive, in debt. What about credit cards? What about her purchase? If you have a home, you need to put a bed, a new fridge, brand new TV, and other things in it. Friend, we just don't find money knocking around. Hire purchase. And with the promotion that comes around, you can get yourself in that. Transportation, a car. And I leave you to ponder. Two working partners, how do they cope? Because if you have two working partners like me, and you go work at different times in different places, sometimes one vehicle is not essential. That friend, you need to get another car to make life easy. Peer pressure from your friends around you. Wait, please still catching the bus. Or fellas all got the pickups, and you're driving a lowly, humble Suzuki, couple of years old. Peer pressure, status quo. This is the school I went to. We're going to keep up the image, friend. These things put you in a particular moral pressure to keep up with the Joneses. I'll finish quickly and and innocently, inadvertently, not meaning to, just living put you in debt. I'll finish with this one quickly because in this one here now, things are beginning to happen. You're still looking for career enhancement, at 30, 35 to 50. You're in that period now when the children are perhaps getting a little bit better. So now you're spending on education, their college education. So although you would have spent 15 years trying to plan this great event, when the time comes, there is not sufficient funds, so more debt. Protection has to happen all along because where people are growing together, the death of one could expose the person, the survivor, to a whole barrage of financial implications, hire purchase, mortgage, rental. These things need to be protected all along. Now, fortunately, and this is one of the things I want to end on, life has some moments of kindness because as you get older, some things start to happen. Available cash accumulation will require that requires some investment planning. There's a period of stabilization and recovery that if we stick with it, if we stay long enough, if we pass through those initial stage of all kinds of stress to survive, what happens? The children eventually get big. They eventually leave the home, thank goodness. Well, please, I better not say that too quick. That can haunt you. But what I'm saying, there is less money being spent on them. Now you are getting money on your own. You would have got accustomed perhaps to your mortgage plan. You would have got an increase in your salary. Things would start to happen. You may have got a better job. And what happens eventually? Things get better. But sickness, unemployment, business failure, they are all realities. And whenever these things happen, you could find yourself in debt. Many people have seen their bank accounts got ruined through a prolonged illness. People who had great savings when they become unemployed lost substantially all. Then what do? You beg a friend. You borrow from a friend. And I hate to say this, one may even be tempted to steal. So the proverbial beg, steal, or borrow. these are realities, all because finances are crucial to our existence. And we get there without even realizing that we are in serious debt. I pause now for my first presentation and then hear your questions later on. That's you.
Amen. Thank you for that, Brother Tyron. Um, we talked a little bit earlier, and the first and the second stage, the that triggers vary quite significantly. But the good news, I guess, is that as you go through the other phases, your debt triggers kind of stabilize, and hopefully then you're able to keep an eye on them to a greater degree. Let us
Yes.
move over to Sister Esther. Sister Esther, are you there?
Yes.
You can unmute and share your video. Excellent. And let's spotlight Sister Esther, those who know how to do that.
Okay, so good night all. So as Tyron ended, life happens. I just want to share my screen here. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. So as Brother Tyron ended, life happens. And we say we get financial crises, we get into debt. So what's a Christian to do? And we start off by saying that your attitude is very important. Do we see our income as ours, or do we see it as coming from God? Do we use our talents to not only to make a living, but use our talents and our income in such a way as to bring him honor and glory? And if so, we should trust him to get out of the financial crisis. But as we know, faith without works is dead. So we have to work on getting out of the crisis. So when we're talking about debt forgiveness, it is a three-way street, a three lane. So you might find yourself in the lane in which you need to forgive someone a debt, or you might be in the lane in which you need to have some debt forgiven, or you have had debt forgiven. And you may also be in the lane in which you need to forgive yourself. And that's God's forgiveness for the financial tangle in which you find yourself. Okay, so there's three lanes going down. At any one point, you might be in all of them separately. If you're a bad driver, you might cross over in lanes, but this lane, you need to forgive yourself, and that's God's forgiveness is where we are going to focus on tonight. So you need to take some steps to financial freedom. And I have 6 here. Number 1, you face your problem head on. I'm borrowing from Brother Trevor Francis on Sunday morning when he said confrontation without condemnation. So you just admit that you're in debt, that you're in trouble, and you need to get some help, and that is confronting without condemnation. So you ask God's forgiveness and you forgive yourself. At this point, you also need to cross over in that lane if you need to forgive a debt. For instance, you might have lent your brother a $50 to put gas in the car, or that $20 lunch you bought for that workmate. Your brother or that workmate, if you see them avoiding you, they might be struggling with shame and anxiety over what may have been a small amount for you, but it's a big amount for them. It's so big to them that they can't pay it back. So you can bless them by forgiving that debt. The second step is to pray for God's counsel, strength, and discipline. So you pray for God's wisdom and you try not to worry. You also need to pray for discipline, because without discipline, nothing in your financial plan will work. Financial planning requires discipline. James 1 verse 5 and Philippians 4 verse 6 could be your starting point in this praying for counsel. Then you need to set goals. In setting your goals, you write down everything that you wish financially in your life. And these could be things like getting out of debt, saving for your child's education, buying a home. And what must be included in that is a rainy day, or what some people call an emergency fund. Then the next thing you do is you prepare a budget and a debt reduction plan. This simply involves listing all your monthly expenses, including saving and giving. You review this list and prepare the budget, in which you are going to try to transfer some of your current discretionary spending into debt reductions or savings. And what is discretionary spending? Do you really need to have the premier plan for your cable TV? How many hours a day do you watch TV? And you're paying for a premier plan. Some of us have Netflix, and sometimes weeks go by and we don't watch a movie. So these are examples of discretionary spending. But when you're making your budget, this is very important, you do not omit things that bring you joy. If you do a budget that is very mean, very lean, and it does not include anything that brings you joy, it will not work. So for instance, if gym is your thing, you cannot leave out your gym membership or any other club membership. You can't leave that out of your budget. A date night with your spouse, you can't leave that out. So things that bring you joy, you have to include in your budget. Then you have to commit to change. You have to commit to making the necessary changes to your spending habits. You can start, for example, if you buy lunch 4 or 5 times a week, and you start small, you don't go cold turkey. So if you buy lunch 4 or 5 times a week, you can start by doing it 3 or 4, and then 2 or 3, until you get to the optimal state that you need to get to. You put away your credit card. If you have not found the discipline that you need after you have put it away and you still find yourself using it, you need to either return it to the bank or you cut it off. You also need, because some people forget this, you also need to delete the details from your Amazon and your PayPal and other places where your information is stored. This is where the discipline comes in. And finally, number 6 that I have is honor God with financial giving. And whether this is a tithe on your gross pay or your net pay or just an offering, but whatever you decide to give, you can give willingly and cheerfully and commit to it. Okay? I'm going to move on quickly to Dave Ramsey's steps, because I know some people view Dave Ramsey as a guru in the financial world. I don't agree with everything that Dave Ramsey says, but I'm going to share with you his steps. His baby step 1. Hello?
Sorry to interrupt you, Esther. This is Pastor Paul. You're doing fantastic. Question had come in. If you could maximize this so we could see it a bit better. So if you click, if you click there, right, and you could even start the actual slideshow. So if you go from current slide over to the left side and up a little bit, yeah. There we go. Thank you so much, Esther. Beautiful.
Okay. So Dave Ramsey baby steps, as I said, I'm sharing with you. I don't agree with everything, and I'm going to tell you why after. But these are his steps, and he is considered the guru in Christian finance. So here it goes. Baby step 1 is, he says, you start out by saving a $1,000 emergency fund. Baby step 2 is that you use the debt snowball to pay off all of your debt except your house. Step 3, you fully fund your emergency fund by saving 3 to 6 months of expenses. 4, you invest 15% of household income for retirement. 5, you save for your kids' college. 6, pay off for your house. And 7, build wealth and give. This can work for some people, but it cannot work for all. So in my opinion, you need to do your research, to find out exactly what works for you. And the reason why it will not work for everyone is because Dave Ramsey's steps, you cannot go on to step 2 until you have completed step 1. So until you save $1,000, you cannot start paying off your debt. Until you pay off your debt, you cannot fund your emergency. You cannot fund your emergency fund. And it goes on and goes on and goes on like that. And that is why I disagree with the way that he has his baby steps, because there are some things. So if you have young children, it is prudent to start saving for their college as early as possible, because then you have to save less. Okay? And you have to decide whether or not you can afford with all your other debts. As Tyrone said, life happens. You may not be able to just take 50% of your household income for retirement. And he's saying you don't do this until you do all of these other things. So if it can work for you, fine. But you make your determination as to whether or not it can work for you. And finally, let me just review the planning process. You determine your current financial situation, you determine your financial goals, you determine your options, you evaluate I'm tight on your alternatives. You create and use your plan, you review and revise your plan, okay? In your cash and your debt managing, there is good debt, which is real estate and education. And this is another segue from Dave Ramsey, who does not believe in that at all. He does not believe that there's a good debt and a bad debt. I personally believe that there's good debt and bad debt. So good debt to me is real estate and education, and bad debt is credit cards and hire purchase. And you also need, in managing your cash and your debt, to be able to determine the difference between your wants and your needs. I'm going to skip this slide now, but I just want to give you some tips on saving an additional $1,000 a year. You can save an additional $1,000 a year by making a few adjustments. So the action is reduce purchase of lunch 1 day a week. That gives you 48 weeks. I did not use 52 because you might be on holiday or something like that, at an average of $12. That gives you $576. Now, when I did this slide a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2019. So I know you can save more now, because I don't think you can buy lunch at $12 anymore. So it just goes to show that you can probably save more now. If you pay your credit card 5 days before the due date, and you assume a balance of $1,500 at the going rate of 22 and 23%, you can save $50 over a year. If you take advantage of your light and power discount, assuming an electricity bill of about $90 per month, you can save $80.40 over the course of a year. And if you save a silver dollar a day for every day you have a container, and every day you drop in a silver dollar, Sundays excluded, that would be $313, and that gives you $1,049. Okay? And finally, I want to say it's not always about the money. Follow Jesus. There are 4 different ways that people equate financial wealth or poverty to spiritual wealth or poverty. Number 1, the belief that material wealth is a sign of spiritual wealth. This is used by the preachers of the prosperity gospel. So they say, we have so much money because we are so rich in our spirituality, in our faith. Then there's the belief that material poverty is a sign of spiritual poverty. And this is the argument that was used by Job Prince in the book of Job. Then there's the belief that material wealth is a sign of spiritual poverty. So there's this belief that if you are rich, you can be a Christian. Okay? So you're spiritual poverty if you are rich. And then there's the belief that material poverty is a sign of spiritual wealth. And this was used by the early century monks who would shave their hair and pledge allegiance to being poor and so on. And that symbolized that they had a high degree of spirituality. We all know it doesn't work that way. And in closing, I want you to write down, take note of this. these financial principles. 10 financial principles that are biblical by George Fuchs. You can research it and you can read that. And then I just want to share with you some references. James 1:5, Philippians 4:6, Luke 6:38, Psalm 37:21, 2 Corinthians 8:9, Proverbs 22:7. That the list is, this is not exhaustive. Those just some I pull out, and then some websites, gotquestions.org, RamseySolutions.org, bestofchristianity.org, and backtothebible.org. So thank you, and we can go on to back to
Thank
Ceci.
you. You can leave that reference list up there for a few minutes, Esther, so that people who are writing it down can get it up there. So excellent. That's given us, I think, a lot of, what's the term, gristle for the mill. So we have a better idea of how that can be something that we can expect to see ourselves in as we move through our financial life cycle. And then Esther has given us some ways to reframe and relook at it as we try to get a handle on our debt. I have one question here that I'm going to ask right at the top because it references something that you just said, Esther. And I guess this would go into the category of myths. Is it true that you should not cut up a bank card without first closing the account? Is that a no-no as far as the bank is concerned? Should you never cut up a bank card without first closing the account?
I am not sure if it is a no-no for the bank. What I can tell you is that if you cut up the card before closing the account, you're still going to be charged the annual fees. So if you're not going to use the account again, you need to go into the bank and close the account, because especially a credit card, you'll still be charged those annual fees because the bank wouldn't know that you're not using it anymore.
Okay, but cutting up a card can be, I would have said, an effective measure if you're having some discipline issues around your credit card.
Yes, if you're having discipline
yourself.
issues, you can cut up the card, but along with that, you have to go into the bank and close the account.
Okay.
So all you would be doing then is paying off what you have accumulated, but you won't be hit with that $100 or $200 fee depending on which card you have.
Okay, so thank you for that, Barry. It is true that we want to close the account. We don't want to just cut the card up because I guess we don't want to forget about the account. So I heard a voice.
It's me, Ceci Harold.
Go ahead, brother.
Good night, everyone. I just wanted to come in here and underscore two things that both Tyrone and Esther said. One, in Tyrone's presentation, people age very quickly. It's amazing how quickly you can move from 25, 30 and raising children to 50, 55 on the brink of retirement. I mean, when you're raising your children and you're paying bills and building a house and so on, you feel you're having fun and enjoying life, you made career. But people age very quickly. Let me give people an example. I recall when I was at the bank and I was about 30 years old, they sent me a letter from the HR department telling me that I will have to retire compulsory at age 60 unless I return a letter saying otherwise. Now here I am at age 30, and these people asking me to make a decision that will affect me at age 60. I didn't even reply to the letter. I didn't even reply to the letter. But guess what? Before I can say Peter, Paul, and James, retirement was looking me in the face. And not only that, I found myself asking the bank to push back my retirement date because I was not ready to leave. people age very quickly. I wasn't ready to leave. The saying is, if I knew now, if I knew then what I know now,
What and you know, yeah.
you know, if I knew then what I know now. So the lesson take from what Tyrone said earlier is to start saving from early. Start saving, start investing from early for young people, because in retirement, income will fall, sickness will occur. So one must be prepared. Don't believe at all that this thing called retirement is somewhere down the road. It will be here quicker than you think. And from Esther's presentation, I just want to underscore the fact that debt is not necessarily always bad. I mean, the government borrows constantly to build roads, to pay teachers, to pay unemployment benefits and so on. This is how they get their money, borrowing and taxation. The question is what you're borrowing for, what you're borrowing for, you know, and how you handle the debt repayments and so on. So don't get it in people's heads, don't get it in your head that debt is a bad thing. A lot of our ancestors lived on debt. They borrowed, but they also repaid. And the other thing about them is that they could save too. There's a saying that the old people could save a penny from a saint. So there's a big distinction there. So the issue is that debt is not necessarily bad. It depends on what you're borrowing for. You don't want to borrow, for example, for simple things like food. You think that if you want to borrow, that you will borrow to buy a house or buy to build a house or to buy land or something like that. So I keep borrowing for the most important things and don't overborrow. Esther mentioned about paying off the credit card in full. I see myself as one of the credit card's worst enemies. I try wherever possible to pay them off in full and avoid that little trick of credit card companies, which is something called the minimum balance. You don't ever go to pay the minimum balance, because if you pay the minimum balance only, you'll find yourself paying for many, many years. So Cecilia, I just wanted to come in to underscore those two things from the presentations by Tyrone and Esther. Thank you.
You're very welcome. The first question that I have up here is about investment options. Barry, I don't know if you want to have me read it, or do you want to maybe put some context to it? Esther, you can stop your share.
The problem about having conversations about investment, as you all know, as persons who are financially savvy, is that there's no one size fits all. And while people think that it's a gimmick, and oftentimes it is, when financial companies say, well, look, you have to come in and have a conversation. The truth is you do actually have to come in and have a conversation, because as you said, your financial plan or advice is one, based on where you are, and two, where you specifically want to go to. So I might have a particular plan for myself, and it might vary significantly with your plan. And therefore, because it varies significantly with somebody else's plan, the financial advice would be relatively significantly different as well. But that aside, I just wanted to have some general ideas. So for our church is relatively a middle-class church. So you have a lot of middle-class advice would unfortunately, not everybody falls into that category. So as happened last time, I would still advise to have some working class advice for those that fall into that category. Which is usually, as I said, that advice is usually pretty different. But regarding to my point is that, so normally when the class people say, well, you know, you invest in the pension plan, you you have an emergency fund, which ain't really saying much now because banks eating into emergency funds. They're not even giving interest on emergency funds. They can't have emergency funds on banks now, whereas in a few years ago you probably could. So it goes with saying, so you invest a little money in a pension plan. You have a pension plan for the insurance people. They might say, well, they might have another insurance policy. But all those things, no disrespect for those people that work for those companies, a lot of those things are designed to make the company money first and you money second. You get one left back. So after those few little things, you buy a few more stocks. My question is, well, what else is there to invest money in outside of those general mainstream things?
Well, Barry, I think that is a very interesting and provocative topic because it's about investment options and how to steward your money. And that brings us back, of course, to the well-known parable, those who have 1 talent, 2 talent, 5 talent. And in reference to your comment about lower income, middle income, and where you might fall, we know from that parable that our mandate is independent of our financial position. Our mandate to take our talents and grow our talents we're held to that standard, whether we have a meager 1 talent or we were blessed with 5 talent as one servant was. So I think it is appropriate that we as a church be mindful that we want to give advice to those who have 5 talents to invest in those that have 1. And essentially, a great way to think of it is that an investment is a way to use your money so that it either holds pace with inflation or that it increases in value. And so if you look at, if you want to look like from a historical point of view, there used to be a time when certain people were excluded from the financial services avenues. And then those people looked at very much at jewelry and real estate as investment instruments, and therefore wouldn't turn up their noses no matter how small a piece of property was. They would buy parking lots, and as long as the jewelry was good jewelry, solid gold, etc., they'd buy jewelry because you could buy it in a small amount to fit to your budget, and you would pretty much know if you bought an 18-carat piece of ring that it would at least hold its value for the next 10 years. And I think when you have smaller investment targets, you want to look outside, yes, of traditional IRAs or mutual funds or buying stocks from the central bank. But you can look in simple things like even antiques. In Barbados, mahogany and cane bottom chairs hold their value very well. And so if you had one or acquired one, you could say, okay, if I spent a couple $100 buying this, I think in 5 or 6 years, it would still be worth a couple $100. It might have gone up in value, maybe about $50. And so that is a small grassroots investment that is available for someone who isn't a sophisticated or a well-funded investor. I don't know if Esther, Tyrone, Harold, or Lucy, or anyone else actually wants to chime in.
I would like to say something, Cecile.
Go ahead, Lucy.
First thing, an emergency fund is not necessarily an income generating fund. It is what it says, emergency. While we like to get some interest on your money, it is not necessary interest, it's not necessarily the driver. That fund is for when your car breaks down, the battery goes, those things that pop up that you need to have cash readily, you should have cash readily available for. Right now, I would say they're the traditional way. There are not many investment avenues available now, income generating. A couple, 2-3 years ago, it used to be government paper, treasury notes, savings bonds, and those sorts of things. Savings bonds were particularly attractive, but I think a lot of those things have dried up. I understand people might be looking at real estate because it seems to be a buyer's market and get some rental income or something like that. But
What about things like mutual funds? We have
mutual
Alfred on
funds
YouTube.
are not, because we do not have, well, Harold will know more about this than I do. We do not have a vibrant stock market. So when you put your funds in the mutual funds, what are they going to buy with it? So that too, in our depressed economic environment, those are not saying much either.
But they do offer you an entree. Alfred on YouTube is saying they can be acquired from as little as $7 per share. There may be a minimum investment required, but
it used to be $500 at one time to for the mutual funds. I don't know what it is now.
So that's, go ahead, Brother Harold.
I would say that Barry asked about small savers, right?
You mentioned emergency fund at first, so that is what I addressed that one.
Yeah, but I asked about the smaller people.
Yeah, but
the,
if I may, okay, you
the
finish.
smaller at the level of small savers, I think most of the small savers in Barbados put their funds on credit unions.
Exactly.
And for one, you get a much higher rate than you get in the commercial bank. And the credit unions, realizing this, have structured a number of plans that actually give premium rates to savers. There's one, for example, I know at a certain credit union called a premier plan, where the interest rate goes up with time. So over a 5-year period, the rate may move from 1% to 5%. Apart from the credit unions, as Lucy said, the market is very inactive. You can try mutual funds. Mutual funds don't pay as much as credit union savings, but certainly they pay more than commercial bank rates. The commercial bank rates now actually are negative because we are paying commercial banks to actually keep our money. Inflation is higher than rates offered by commercial banks. So it makes no sense unless you can use a commercial bank now really as a piggy bank, some place to keep your money safely.
I guess I would say though that shouldn't we as a church be trying to find avenues outside of the strictly financial services environment or marketplace?
There are not very many avenues. I mean, Lucy mentioned real estate, but of course, real estate calls for a pretty big outlay. People who collect stamps have tried it. Some people collect stamps, coin, currency, but those things are long-term investments. You've got to be collecting stamps and coins for a very long time to amass stamps to such a value that it really makes sense doing it. Our market is very inactive. If you watch CBC and look at the various market reports on nights and see what's happening in Jamaica, what's happening in Trinidad, very often on a given day in Barbados, nothing happens. I should also mention though that I think some of us missed an opportunity about a year ago when the government issued those boss bonds, not to take advantage of them because the boss bonds in actual fact pay 5%, and that is still the best rate in town. I know people were very taken aback by the fact that the government had rearranged the savings bond market to the detriment of savers. A lot of people lost confidence in government paper, but those boss bonds that came out last year at 5% are still the best rate in the market. But there's not a lot. There's not a lot that small savers can get into the, apart from credit unions.
Thank you, Brother Harold. Sister
Lucy,
France.
sorry, just 1 minute, please. There's something else I would like to say just quickly.
Lucy, go ahead.
Credit cards. I would like to remind that credit cards are really loans.
Yes.
People may not see them as loans, but they're really loans. And they should be treated accordingly. Now, I think personally, a credit card is really a convenience. It should be a convenience. Where you do not want to walk with cash, you use your credit card and you pay it off. But if you decide I'm going to the bank and I'm going to get a $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 limit credit card, and I'm going to swipe it at will, you're borrowing money. And in a lot of cases, money that you really don't need. So one should change the mindset when it comes to credit card. It really is a loan and it should be treated accordingly.
Fair enough. Sister Francis Patrick, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, good night. Very informative session. With regard to what Barry was talking about as it relates to investments, I understand, I believe what he's saying from a working class perspective and not having the funds, the amount of funds that you would like to not only invest on a large scale, but also to diversify in a way that, you have that emergency fund, you have something to fall back on, you don't feel like you're scrambling every month to pay a bill or something like that. And our for parents got involved in susus and meeting terms, and while it wasn't investments where interest was implemented, it certainly helped them to get projects on the way, to put food on the table, and and to live basically. And while it may seem mundane or probably elementary, meeting terms do work, and I suspect because of this same I don't want to use the word desperation, but I can't find another word right now, is why these blessing circles are also very prevalent. They're not the most
Sister Francis, I think that is a profound statement, that by the constant ignoring of the sort of grassroots need to find alternative to our traditional financial services instruments, then because that is being ignored by most quote unquote establishment financial planners, we have this void that those who are willing to manipulate go into and create these plans. I mean, I was really proud of Berean that we offered a savings plan, no interest earned, but we had good uptick on it, in that it's a way to put away your money and then get your money back after a period of time, because that's an instrument that people find necessary and needful. So I would wonder if people like Harold and Lucy want to kind of address what
just a
can
minute,
we
Cecile. Just a minute though, because what these particular initiative does is, now they cater to people that have smaller pockets, the $50 and the $25. If you got somebody telling you that if you invest $25 and within 3 weeks you can get $1,000, hello, but I can take a chance because nothing else is happening. You understand what I'm saying? And if you lose, you ain't really mind because it's only $25. You see what I'm saying? But what it does though, it puts you in a position that if I do get the $1,000, then I'm able to do more. They may even reinvest in the same blessing circle or a meeting turn or whatever, because they have now been exposed to something that actually works for them. You understand?
Hello. Excuse me. I have to slightly interject here. There is a significant difference between a meet and turn and a susu and a blessing circle. And I have to caution the panel or the moderator or whoever it is to be clear on the difference between the two. A meet
Barry,
and turn.
can you define them for us? because I will admit that they're terms that I throw around as interchangeable, and
No, they're
I
not.
can't say that I know the specific
Right. So
definitions of the three.
let me assist you all. Right. So a meet and turn or a susu is something that we have used from time immemorial. And there's nothing wrong with it because there's no interest attached. And as it should be, because there's no random money being generated somewhere. If I've given $25 and there are 5 people in the susu and everybody gives $5, the most that you can have is 125. Because that's how money works. Unless you're a counterfeiter or you're a government that is a legal counterfeiter or a legal printer of money. It's like if 125 is what you have, that's what you have. You can't have more than 125. And
Okay,
therefore,
so
if
I
you
have
do
here
get
a meet and turn is 20 is people giving the same amount every period.
right. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter per se, but what the main thing about the meet and turn or the susu is that there is no interest. Because as I said, that's how money works. If I've given 25, and as I said, there are 5 people that give 25, the most that I can get out of the meet and turn is 5 times 25, which is
Okay.
$125, right? And therefore, that is my turn this month, and then somebody gets their turn next month, which is $125, and I don't get my $25 back. Somebody gets my $25, but I've already gotten everybody else's $25 this month. And what meet and turns do is for those people that are very hard up and cannot save money, it allows, as is correctly said, that lump sum effect that wealthy people use all the time, because lump sums can do more than individual small sums of money, and that is what meet and turns do. Now, blessing circles are an aberration, an abomination of that. What blessing circles try to trick people with is magic. That's what it is. It's trying to trick people with magic, which is that I put in 25 and then all of a sudden I'm getting 1,000. But wait, hold on. But how can I get $1,000? It is impossible. And therefore, what happens is that to achieve that inverted commas exponential increase in money, I have to trick people and dupe people out of their money. And it's not the same as a meet and turn, because as I said, in a meet and turn, I get back what I have put in.
But Barry, if I put in my $25, why wouldn't I? What makes it a guarantee that I'll get my 125 when it's my meet and turn?
As I said, if you have a manager of your meet and turns, as I said, what goes in comes out. But the difference with a blessing circle is that what goes in cannot ever come back out, because you always need new people to part with their money for you to get that increase.
The blessing circle,
it's like similar to a Ponzi scheme.
It's a Ponzi scheme, really. It is a Ponzi scheme, right?
Exactly. So
no, the meet and turn has been around, as Barry said, for years, and it is a good way of cooperatives. It's a good way of pooling resources and so on. The only problem comes when somebody doesn't hold their end of the bargain. This is why,
because I know I've seen it in the paper that people get
right.
There was a lady in the paper who was out thousands of dollars, and she was saying she ran a meeting turn.
People are now get their turn, but they don't refuse them to pay up. This is why at the Berean we started our savings plan. It didn't depend on whether somebody paid or not. You put in, you get back what you put in. And I'm hoping that we can resume that in the fullness of time.
Okay, so I think
bigger thing.
What we've clarified is that a meet and turn is get out what you put in, and a blessing circle is get out more than you put in.
Exactly.
And therefore, a blessing circle
at the expense of new people, which is why I always have to get new people to join, but eventually you run out of new people to trick, and
And then it
therefore
Which one
collapses.
is a susu? Which one
A
is a
meeting
susu?
term,
It's the
a
same
meeting
thing,
term
the
and a
same thing.
susu is the same thing.
Okay, alrighty. Thank you. I'm gonna close this.
So I see it just for clarity.
Go ahead, Fran.
I was saying that people of a working class or lower middle income get involved in these particular activities because they are looking for ways to save money. It wasn't in any way suggesting that someone should get involved in either of the two. I was just saying that these are other options that people choose.
Yeah, and
when they
that
want
came
to.
across. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone thought you were
Yeah.
advocating
I
for
didn't
either
put it
one.
that way.
But I would say that the advent of credit unions, where accounts can be opened for as little as 10, sometimes as little as $5, probably dealt a major blow to meeting terms
Yes.
because there was a time where there was almost like an entry hurdle to open and keep a bank account. And when credit unions came in, they lowered the cost of maintaining a bank account. And so you could more cheaply save money. And it seems as if a meeting turn is a money saving device that allows the participant to avoid usury fees, that allows them to avoid bank fees and bank charges. And so when credit unions came in, I could imagine that meeting turns took a blow.
They did. And the credit union brought in the added benefit of security for the funds.
Right. Because if I get my turn, if they're 10 weeks and I pay, and you're supposed to pay your $25 in every week for 10 weeks, and I get my meeting turn on the first week, I might not remember come week 7
Yeah.
to keep putting in my meeting
Cecile,
turn.
If there are no questions on the table right now, I would like to back up a bit.
Sure, go ahead. We have one about cryptocurrency, but go ahead with your comment, Sister Lucy.
We spoke on debt. We are speaking of finances. And I basically think the principle in dealing with money is the same, whether you have low income or a higher income. I'm not going to rich or super rich. You try to spend less than you earn, and you try to be disciplined in your spending. Now, from my experience, we talk about debt, and although my whole thought on debt has shifted, I found from my experience in banking, a lot of people put themselves in unnecessary debt, and it does not matter whether you're Christian or not. Look, I can manage this. We look at something called your debt service ratio, and you say, okay, the rule of thumb is 40%, or so I could do that, and I could go and borrow.
Hang on a bit there, Sister Lucy. Just for debt service ratio is a comparison of your income to how much debt you're already in. And
Percentage of what you pay in debt to your income. So if you're working for $1,000 a month, some say 35%, which is $350. And remember, this is of your gross. $350 or $400, that is usually the rule of thumb.
So but they think if you earn $1,000 gross a month, you should be spending no more than $400 of that $1,000 paying towards credit cards, bank loans, and other debt, and other non-residential debt.
Yeah. I find also that we need to look at a plan for our lives. Harold spoke about retirement, and we all know that you get old very quickly. And retirement is a stage where, you know, usually as you get older, you have health issues and those sorts of things. You find that your money, you're now on a pension rather than a salary. And there are a lot of challenges that will come with that. And if you're unfortunate enough to be, and this is another thing, a lot of people must learn what pensions are about, how much pension you get for national insurance. If you do not have a private pension and you only have to rely on national insurance pension, can you survive on that and plan accordingly? The experts will tell you start planning for retirement as soon as you start to work. And these are things that we need to try to find out as much as possible about these things, that as we get older, we don't find ourselves, out of pocket, so to speak, and in dire straits.
Well, if my take-home pay is $1,000 now as a working professional, what do I expect that I will be able to comfortably live on when I'm retired? Should I be expecting to comfortably live on 30% of what I earn now or 70%?
It depends too on what your lifestyle. What do you want to continue when you are retired? Do you want to continue to have a car? Do you still have house insurance? If you have a house, are you still going to be paying rent? It does not shift a lot, really.
So basically what you're saying is, as we do our budgeting as we go along, while we're young, while we're working, we should be making careful note of those expenses that we're paying in our 30s and our 40s that we will not expect will go away after we retire, so that there's a great wealth of financial information right in your own checkbook balancing, where you're saying, well, you know what, a car expense, I'm realizing that I have a car loan continually. I get a new car maybe every 10 to 12 years. That's going to continue after I retire.
Or
So
even if you don't have a car loan, you still have the maintenance on a car. But what I'm saying also, like, I am 70. My former employer provided health insurance, but they kick you out at 70. So it's either I provide my own insurance, I hope I have enough savings that, well, the alternative is the government, but you know what can happen there, but that you have enough savings that if you should have a health crisis, that you can fund it. So, I think you really have to start thinking critically from a very early age and look at everything. Do we really want the house do you really want to tie yourself up in a 30-year mortgage? How can I build wealth if I'm paying a mortgage for 30 years? Do we want just to have a few dollars savings? I have a note here, and this is something that I have had noted a long time ago. Proverbs 13:26 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children." A lot of people say, I ain't got nothing left in the body. But while some people have that mindset and live like that, there comes a time where you yourself might be living and in need, because you so much don't want to have anything to leave for anybody. You're not providing for yourself. So I think there are a lot of things that we need. The mindset has to change. Do we want to live paycheck to paycheck? Do we want to create wealth? And sad to say, us Black people, we have not been taught to create wealth. If you try, you find your colleagues tell you you're cheap, you don't like to spend money, you don't this, you don't do that. But the whole mindset, I think, in our finances has to change. It is all right for the bankers. Yes, I benefited greatly by it, to say that you must, your debt service this. And when we had our mortgage, it was 20-year mortgage. Now I think you could get nearly 40 years. You could go on till you're dead paying a mortgage. Does that help? How does that help you? How does that help your children?
And sometimes our debts live on after we are gone. Before we go into that, though, we had a question about a term that was used in Esther's presentation, snowball effect. Esther, would you step in and help us understand what you meant by that?
Okay, paying off your debt, that's a method of getting out of debt. Basically, what it means is that and this is a term that Dave Ramsey used as well. I would modify it somewhat, but let me tell you exactly what it is according to him, and then I will tell you how I will modify it. Basically, what Dave Ramsey says is that you pay off the smallest debt first. So let's say you have 4 debts. You owe $100, $200, $300, $400. You pay off the $100. When you finish paying off the $100, you add whatever payment you were making on that $100 loan, and then start paying it towards the $200 loan. And then you go to the $300 and so on until all the debts are paid. What Dave Ramsey does not take into consideration is interest rates. So and the thing is that it's momentum, so that you feel good when you've paid off one debt. Basically, that is the premise behind it. So if you have 10 debts and you pay off the smallest one first, you feel encouraged to go on and pay more money towards the second debt and so on. It is good, but there are a couple of things that I take into account when I'm doing a debt reduction strategy for someone. You take a small debt, yes, and you start paying that off, that you can free up some money. But I don't believe in putting all of that debt to the second one if you are not saving for retirement, or if you're not saving for your emergency fund. Instead, I would take that money and put towards an emergency fund. And only after I get what I determine is my correct emergency, put that to the second debt. But basically, snowball is that you pay the smallest debt first, take the money from that debt, add it to the second debt, and so on until all the debts are paid. And whoever asked the question, do you understand?
Let's see, let me go back to, I was just putting up the definition on the whiteboard, but I think that explains it. And I put a definition up here. It's a way of ranking your debt by smallest to largest, paying off the smallest, putting as much as you can towards the smallest after having put the minimum to all the other debts. Put the minimum to all the other debts, and any extra money goes towards the smallest. And that way the smallest then is completely removed from your list. You have that sort of extra buzz of having struck one off the list. And then you do the same thing for the next one. Pay minimum payments on everything, and then any extra put to the next smallest on the list. Yes. I personally would suggest that you rank your debt by highest interest rate and pay the minimum of everything, and then put any extra to the debt with the highest interest rate. Because even though it might take you a very long time to move that first debt off your list, then the others will move much more quickly, because at least your interest rate is not adding to the weight.
There are several methods, but what you need to do is to use which works for you. And I don't believe in putting all your money into repaying debt if you are not saving. You need to start saving.
I see. Okay. Here we have a question that asks, is there such a thing as inherited debt? So when your parent dies, not just the funeral expenses, but how much of the debt that a person is under when they dies with them, and how much lives on for their heirs? Brother Tyron, I wonder if I can pass that to you as a life insurance specialist. I would think that that's a conversation you've had with people through the years.
Thanks, Cecile. You're asking if debt lives on after a person leaves?
Yes.
Oh, yes. And I guess that's why insurance is what we advocate for it. You mentioned apart from funeral expense.
Yeah, the question is there such a thing as inherited debt, such as a parent's debt, not referring to funeral expenses, but their mortgage and their car note, and maybe a lawsuit that they lost?
Yeah, I mean, let's understand that you inherit not just assets from your parents, but you also inherit whatever liability they leave.
Yeah.
If there are unpaid taxes on a property, um, if there's education that same parent may have had for the same children from a banking institution somewhere, who pays that off? If there are hire purchase items in a house that you live in, and that person whose name they're in dies, um, who pays them off? Now, mind you, some institutions may have options. You may get the hire purchase company coming the day after and just discreetly try to get their stuff back if it is not too old. You may get a car company who have, let's say the debt is on a car or to the bank may repossess um, the car. Uh, another interesting one is the business. And the business may be one of the biggest ones. Let's say a sole trader has a little furniture company somewhere. He's the person doing all, but he or she will be in debt to run the business for the family's well-being and passes on. Yes, that debt, unless someone in the family pays it off, the bank could close the business and cease operations. So yes, a lot of debt can be passed on inadvertently, meaning well, and death knocks at the door and catches all of us at some point in time. So the answer to that is yes, you can inherit debt for a little while.
So, having said that, Tyrone, what does that say about the conversations we have to have with our parents as they age? Should I say to my father, who maybe is 70 and just totaled his car, you are not allowed to go to Simpson Motors and buy a brand new car because a 70-year-old may not outlive an 8-year car loan? I mean, I might not have a problem having that conversation, but not everybody's going to have a problem. Is going to be okay having that conversation. How do you advise people about that? Do you just say, keep your nose clean when they die? Just get in there and work it all out, or are there some tools that you offer people to say, how do you talk to your parents about end of life purchases?
Interesting. I want to look at it from two points of view. Um, if there are if there is a set of property, let's say your father may be going to borrow a car loan, but he has land or house and other business, other properties that if they are sold, can liquidate the debt. Um, then what has got to happen is who gets the debt passed on to them may have to make sure dad puts the property in a way where when he passes on, I can go and overtake his loan because the land or the house or whatever that he passes on could take care of the debt. That's one. So it's the estate planning to ensure that the debt burdened person, for the person who inherits the debt, could still liquidate by selling land, selling the house, and selling off the car. That's one way. Or keep the car, but sell off something. The other one is have an appropriate amount of license of insurance on the value of the loan. Now, banks do that a lot and they call it creditor insurance. If I'm going to have a loan of $50,000 with the possibility that I can die before I pay back that loan in its fullness, if I have a life insurance policy for $50,000 that is understood to liquidate that debt immediately on my death, that will suffice. You may not want to stop your dad from enjoying his brand new Mercedes. He might want to live, but he has also got to understand his responsibilities that if he passes on too quickly, he could pass the debt on. So life insurance is one way. It brings easy liquidity. Another way is to ensure that any other property he has is passed on in my name to inherit, because I will have to find a way then to use the value of this other property to liquidate whatever loan debt he leaves.
And Julia raises the important point that it shows us how important wills are, and a well-worded will can help
Exactly.
us there.
Exactly.
We've got
Can
Barry
I
and
just say
Ezra.
one? Sorry, things like consumer debt, like car loans. I mean, if your dad passes, Simpson takes the car. Your name is not on the deed, so Simpson or whoever can take the car. The car is not yours. It's not in your name.
Okay.
So, but like a house, if the person has a will, your dad has a house and he has a mortgage on it, and he leaves the house to you, you inherit the debt. You inherit the mortgage because you have the asset.
Yes, I can appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah.
We have Barry and Ezra with their hands up, but because Ezra hasn't been able to contribute thus far tonight, Ezra, would you unmute your microphone and share your question with us?
Good night, everybody. I'm enjoying this discussion. Is there anything as when somebody died, the debt goes with them as well? I know sometimes we hear people say that, for instance, if my father decides to go and borrow some money to get something, so nothing tangible is involved. So no car, no house to take back, right? But nothing was signed, but just an agreement to lend that money, and he passes. And the person decides to come to me and I fail to give, what could happen? Isn't that a case where the debt goes with him because I decided not paying because I was not involved in the arrangement? So I'm just thinking, could a person bring me to court? I don't think so because I didn't sign it.
Well, I'll answer first, but others can join in.
What could happen with that?
When someone passes, they're going to have an estate, and that estate and their will is their opportunity to specify how the assets in that estate, the net assets of that estate, are distributed. So if I pass away and I say I want my car to go to this person, I want my house to go to this person, I want my jewelry to go to this person, that's what the estate will seek to do. However, they will do that net of my assets. So if I leave my house to you, but it's worth 300,000 and I have 500,000 owed on it, you don't get the house and then have to the estate would be sued. So sued or the lien would be against the estate. So even if I have a house, if I have assets totaling 500,000, but then debts and those who I owe bring their debts to the estate or to the probate court and they are adjudicated as valid, then those debts total, for example, 400,000, then my assets of 500 less the debts of 400, then my will becomes a document that speaks to how the remaining 100 is distributed. And so if I say leave, 10,000 for Ezra and the rest to my daughter, then the court then has to determine, okay, well, how much really does Ezra get? Because she specified a number for Ezra, but she then said the rest to her daughter, and et cetera, et cetera. So there really shouldn't be someone hounding you, the heir. They should go to the probate court to make their claim to the estate. And the probate court will satisfy valid debt and then use the will as a document to guide them as to how to distribute the remaining assets after the debt has been served.
As we're talking about an informal debt or formal debt, that's the thing.
Informal. There's some institutions where, just a minute, there's some institutions where what we call unsecured debt, where you don't have a car note or you don't have a mortgage or anything, they are insured because of the risk. So you come and you have a 3-year loan, the customer pays the premium. So if the customer dies, that should be paid. All institutions do not do that. if you should die, then as Cecil says, the lender would then make a claim against the estate. If it is a small amount, something the hassle and thing, they don't bother. But normally they would make a claim against the estate.
Sister Esther, you said something about formal versus informal debt.
Yes, because I wasn't sure if she meant a formal debt, and I basically was going to say what Lucy said.
Okay, can I ask the question over again? Listen what I'm talking. Okay,
No,
say, for instance, brother Adrian has a garage. My father has a van. The van is only worth about, because it's so old, it's worth just about $2,000, but it write off. So whatever, get into a bad accident, and he agrees to fix. That fixing, the van may still not even worth a $5,000 because it's a 1975 model, and he's saying, what? Because I know I'll fix it for you, but the body work may cost you about $8,000, right? So no estimate involved, nothing about no house, because that person have no house, he have nothing because he's been renting for all his life. So he have nothing to give back to save his estate. So I'm just saying, he dies, he leave that old piece of van behind, he didn't live a good life, so he have no land, nothing to go back, no house. Now, is it that Brother Adrian can say, I could sue your daughter because I know that's his child and he has to pick
Cecile?
that? No.
Cecile, I see Tanya's hand is up. I don't know if she wants to speak in her legal capacity on estate. But as you said earlier, the estate can be sued, right? Even though there's nothing, the estate can be sued, and the estate can very well be part of that person's lack of property or not. Tanya, I don't know if you want to expand on that or she's asking something else.
Tanya, the floor is yours. Go ahead and unmute.
Everyone. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, right. I wanted to add clarity on two things regarding like hire purchases and loans in general, which will fall under contract law. And then I want to touch briefly on the probate law as well, or the rules of intestacy. So going on the contractual law, for example, hire purchase or even car loans, everything is built into the contract. And you know there is a custom or a norm. I know like worldwide where, you know, you're forced to, okay, just we go to the store that says to buy a sofa. You were told, okay, just sign this one-page document without even having a glance at it. So, but those are also contracts as well. It could be one page or more. However, that would always contain the terms of the contract. So for example, if you're going to court to take out a sofa for hire purchase, like say you pay $10 a week or so forth, what happens is that even before you die, that contract will state that, you know, the furniture is actually owned by courts until the final payment, like say on X date and X amount. So let's say you die before the final payment is made, then court still owns that sofa and they will have the right to come and repossess that sofa and take it back. So in that instance, it wouldn't be a case of the loan being transferred to somebody else upon your death. Same as well with the mortgage. In recent times, financial, I'd say banks and so forth, in recent times, they have now as well been doing what, for mortgages as well. They have to be asking sometimes the mortgagees to take out a life policy as well, which the equivalent of the actual mortgage, but minus the interest. So in that instance as well, even though and how land is owned as well is a bit technical too when you have a mortgage, because you have two different types of ownership as well. One would be legal and one would be in equity. And in the legal terms as well, basically once you have a mortgage, that actual mortgage is the house as it is, even though on paper it is yours until you pay off the mortgage. Technically, whether it's a bank or the co-op, they still have rights to ownership as well of that land. So for example, if you go and take out a mortgage and let's say any sum of $1,000 and they ask you, okay, before we can grant you approval for this mortgage, we want you to take out a life insurance policy in the same amount. Then again, what happens is that if you die, that debt as well will not transfer to your estate, because then your life insurance the policy will kick in and that will be used to pay off the mortgage sum. And what they do as well in recent times, they can say, well, you know what, even though we still have interest to claim as well, that's the least of our of our worries would just be the interest, because we have the overall market sum from insurance policy. And in that
So you're
instance,
saying, Tanya, that the house then goes through as an asset to the estate, but it does not come with its corresponding debt. The debt is netted by the insurance policy?
okay, right. So correct. But in that instance, though, what will happen is that property itself will still be deemed as basically owned by the bank until the mortgage sum is paid off. So the bank can either then go after the personal representatives for the interest, or they can say, you know what, that's the least of our worries. We would just waive that interest. That will kick in upon, let's say, my death. And in that case as well, any debt will not be transferred to any estate upon my death. Also, as well, what the bank can do as well, the co-op, they can also
That's
bring a
okay. We
claim as
don't want to
well,
go
right,
into too
to the
much
estate.
detail, Tanya. That's okay. We understand that
It's discretionary on the bank.
there's there.
Okay.
But what you're saying is that yes, we can, in answer to the question, yes, we can inherit debt through our estate. And actually, there is quite a bit of complexity in terms of whether it's a higher purchase or it's a mortgage or it's more significant. And I think to Ezra's comment, I think if your parent has something at a local professional, whether it's a car being repaired or not, they can certainly it sounds like you're saying they, according to the arrangement that has been made with them, they could come at you or at the estate, or only at the estate.
No, but once it is a loan, that they can come back for the actual item and repossess it, correct, rather than go after the estate.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, Barry, your hand was up, and let's go to you because I definitely want to give some time before we close, because we've got Brother Harold here. We want to get at least 5 minutes talking about the current economic solution situation, so that we leave with that. Go ahead, Barry.
All right, sorry. I was trying to unmute. So regard to debt. So again, debt is like again financial planning. The issue that we have, as we kind of skirted around it all night, but we have to be plain. The problem with financial planning is that we don't talk about it. So people have money, and in our environment, we are frightened or ashamed to let people know, because if people know they have money, they can ask for it, which is usually what happens. All kind of people gonna start asking for money once they've know you have some. And therefore, people have money and they have investments, but they don't talk about it, which is my challenge, because I'm trying to get people to talk to me about it so they can get some too. But so that's one of the challenges that we have, that our older parents and our grandparents and stuff would have things and wouldn't discuss them with their children, especially older ones. They would have piece of land and the boy moved it, et cetera, got $100 and something thousand stashed in the house and the floorboards, and nobody don't know about it. So it's only when they die and you're gonna say, oh, you put it over the house and somebody move a board and see some money, and say, well, what's this? Which has happened. Mind you, it was not a relative that found the money and went away with it, which is a problem. So I think that's one of the main challenges that we have, that we don't like to talk about finances. We don't like to talk about salary and what you're paying and how much did you get at the bank versus somebody else.
Barry,
what rate did you get? Yes, please.
You mentioned that one of the things you're doing is trying to get people to talk to you about their money situation. So that suggests to me that you're more comfortable with it. But do you have you gleaned any insight into what is it that you think maybe is a recurring theme among those who feel uncomfortable saying, yeah, I have some discretionary income. I could go into a share with you. Maybe we all put together and buy a supermarket and let one of our friends run it. What do you think stops people from feeling like they should? What do you think causes people to have that secrecy?
I think it's one is I think it's something that goes back to plantation mentality and slavery. Like I think we just don't trust one another. That's one. Um, and two, I think that um, again is this thinking that I had to struggle and I had to fight to get to where I am, etc. And therefore, you should have to do it as well, which I find as well. So persons that are ahead of me, I usually try to ask persons who are ahead of me to give, what are you doing? How are you making your money work for you? That kind of stuff. One issues that I have is that a lot of middle class persons, which I'm usually surrounded by, I'm not usually surrounded by Mark Maloney and those kind of fellas. Generally are in the same kind of debt traps that I'm trying to avoid. I don't want those debt traps. So they have the mortgage debt killing them. Maybe they're a little better off, so maybe they have the mortgage and they're paying it off pretty reasonable. Then they buy a piece of land. It's like, what are you doing with a piece of land? Not really doing anything. But,
Well, Barry, I
uh,
wonder if I could interrupt you, because one of the things that we know about the early church was that there was quite a bit of resource and financial pooling. And so I don't want to put the pastor on the spot, but I wonder if he wants to weigh in on whether or not there's been a deliberate move of the church away from talking about money and about money sharing and about money pooling, or if it's just society has drifted away from the church in that regard. Or what does he think, Pastor? What do you think the role of the church has been in taking us from an early church that pooled all of their money to where we are now, where not only do we not really pool money, but we don't even really discuss money amongst each other?
Hi, thank you, Cecile, for roping me in. Discussion is fantastic. They're gonna just dip in here and get out the way. No, I can't say. I can't say. We know that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, right? And so perhaps that has been taken, and some people have run from the subject, right? And not considered the several other passages that talk about investing, that support investing and saving for your children and not being a servant to the lender. But anyhow, so I think we've ignored that. Money is bad, money is evil, and we haven't spoken about it much, except for, as Esther said, the prosperity gospel guys who are like, hey, money is here, let's get some, right? And they fleece the flock. So I think some people, many churches are having a conversation, but it is twisted, right? Is twisted. We need right teaching about money, and I was hoping perhaps we hear somebody say something about the role of contentment when it comes to alleviating the pressures that were described earlier in the presentation, right? Right. So I am keeping up with the Joneses, right? Because I want my wedding to be through the roof, right? Because I lack contentment in my life. I lack that maturity, right? This is a spiritual problem as well. Let's not overlook that. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for allowing me to say something, and let me get out the way so that the experts can weigh in. Thank you, Cecile.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate that. I think there are two separate conversations, though. My personal relationship with money and the way I relate to others with money. So, talking to people about money, sharing debts of others, and I do agree that we mustn't have a relationship with money such that money becomes a god with a small g, or even a large g for that matter. But we also have to challenge ourselves to understand what God expects of us in terms of relating to others with money and relating to each other with money. And very going right back to almost the very first question Barry posed about, yeah, we've got the traditional methods of investing, but are there any alternatives? And kind of alluded to the fact that the alternatives out there exclude those that are on the lower income. And I think real estate pooling or investment pooling is certainly a tool that those who have smaller investment targets would benefit greatly from. And if we don't learn how to discuss money safely in a way that doesn't make us vulnerable, if we don't learn how to share money safely in a way that doesn't make us vulnerable, then we carve ourselves out of those options for, like you said, going in with two friends from school or two friends from church, and buying a parking lot or a business or buying a piece of land that none of you want to build your home on, but you're hoping that by the time you're in your 30s, you can sell at a premium and start your home. And so when we find a way to have those conversations, then we broaden the options that we have for investing in safe and durable ways outside of the financial tools that you may need a larger investing budget to access. Having said that, there was a question about cryptocurrencies that I don't think I am prepared to answer. Is there anyone on the call who can speak to cryptocurrencies? I mean, I can explain what cryptocurrencies are. I don't think it would help you very, very much. But it's a hot topic right now, and I think it needs prayerful consideration, is all I can say. I do want to keep you aware of what's going on YouTube. We have Dolores Codrington saying most parents keep the contents of their will very close to their chest. Hardly ever is any open conversation had. Cherie has said, why is it that we think we have to wait for death to settle with our children? And I think by that she means, why is it that we're going to we're going to have our communication about our money through our will with our children and not have those conversations up front. And those are good points. We are well over our time frame. I think 8:30 was our conservative end time. We're now past 9 o'clock. I hope everybody is where they intend to spend the night, or you're going to be starting curfew. But if you are where you did not intend to spend the night, you
Have to spend the night.
you got to spend the night and follow Jesus is all I will tell you. Continue to follow Jesus. But
So I see you making some.
Tanya, thank you so much for weighing in. Because it's really important that people understand that a lot of disciplines that we think stand alone are really integrated. Our lawyers and our financial service providers really need to be on the same page, and we need to get on the same page. I wonder if you could just briefly, Tanya, in closing, give us a little synopsis of some takeaways that you would like us to have, maybe something about wills.
Okay, sure. Good night again. The only thing about wills as well is that you can also inherit debt through a will, because it's not every asset contained in a will that can be as expressed in the will. So for example, your father can say, okay, I will leave $10 to Tanya when I die, but that $10 may be held, let's say, by a co-op as well. And therefore you may think, okay, I'm getting money from my father when he dies, but no, that $10 may be owed to somebody else, and therefore it's not yours. So be careful as well when you see things in a will, because it does not mean that you can have it. It may also be a debt that you're incurring from, the deceased person.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And you know what, Hector, I see a hand up. Hector, I don't know the last name. You want to unmute yourself and ask your question before we move over to Sister Lucy for some final comments from Sister Lucy, and then on to Brother Harold. Okay, I don't see Hector anymore. Okay. Sister Lucy? Oh no, here's Hector. Go ahead and Hector's connecting to audio. Hector, go ahead and share your comment with us.
Yes, good night. This was about the cryptocurrency. You could hear me? Oh.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, cryptocurrency. Could hear me?
Seem to be going in and out. The last thing I
Yes,
heard
we
was
can hear you. We can hear you, but it seems as though you're listening to something else in the background. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you could hear me clearly now?
Yes, I feel like I'm on brass tacks. Please, caller, could you turn off the radio in the background and just listen through your telephone?
Yes.
Because we're having some feedback. So when I send out a poll asking y'all to nominate me to be a brass tacks moderator, I hope that everybody willingly says sure. Go ahead, caller. You're on the line.
Yeah. All right. Briefly about cryptocurrency. From the beginning, crypto was something that a lot of people had no faith in, right? Because they didn't know why it was like anything else that is new.
Correct.
Right? And a lot of people lost out on a lot of what you call wealth with crypto. And since then, you had other opportunities to participate in crypto, but I find that Barbadians in the whole don't like to take risks. Right? You would show someone an opportunity, say, look, it have risk involved, but because it is new to them, they say, oh, not me. But they will still turn around then and go into what they figure is something that is safe and has the same amount of risk. But crypto made a lot of people wealthy in a short space of time, 2, 3 years, 5 years, and whatnot, by just investing a little. And over the time, crypto climbed and made millionaires and billionaires out of a lot of people. Right? And crypto is still around, still going strong, and is here to stay because it's the currency of the future. As you know, a lot of countries are now adopting crypto as some main currency and whatnot. Right? So it's something that bigger people should look at seriously, and they come to investing and whatnot. You could get into a crypto for some new cryptos as little as cents, or even single digit dollars, $2, $3, and over a period of months, a couple of years, be very wealthy, right? But like in anything, it has risk. Some of them take off, some of them don't.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that, brother. I will say there's a distinction in knowing what cryptocurrency does and who is into cryptocurrency, and understanding what cryptocurrency is and how it works. So I will absolutely agree with you that it's a new emergent on the market, on the financial market, has made people significant funds. It seems to have revolutionized banking and money transfer, but what is it? So when you invest, you should invest in general because you have a deep understanding of what you're investing in and how it will improve the value of the money that you're investing in it. And a deep understanding does not mean I know a lot of people investing in this. Now, that's going to mean sometimes that you miss the boat because there are a lot of uninformed investors who get lucky. I mean, I remember when Twitter was nothing and people were investing in it, and then those who did made millions, and then it fell off a bit. But if those who invested that knew what Twitter was and made millions also took along a lot of people who didn't really understand what Twitter was, but were following the crowd, and they made money too. The problem with that strategy of not fully understanding your investment but following the crowd is that it's 50-50. Sometimes you follow the crowd off the cliff, sometimes you follow the cloud up the mountain. So I at this point understand crypto exists. I can't tell you that I understand how it adds value, but I appreciate your words. Okay. Esther. No. Lucy, could you give us
here.
a brief
Just
closing comment?
Just what
Then
I want
Esther.
to say, your finances are important. Manage them well. Have a plan for your money. And the first rule, do not spend more than you earn. If you have to get into debt, make sure it is necessary and it is manageable. That what you make sure that the debt does not own you, you own the debt and you can manage it. And long term, look to build wealth. One thing we did not touch on really tonight was debt forgiveness. Esther touched briefly on the individuals, Christian, but out there in the real world, there isn't much debt forgiveness. If you borrow, make sure you pay back. Because if you borrow, especially lending institutions, and you cannot pay back, they do not, you hear about write-off, but it really does not go away. They pursue it. And one of the worst things would be to have a judgment lodged against you in the law courts, and it follows you. You will find it after that very hard to get credit. So these are just a few things.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Owen, would you like to say something? You haven't said anything so far, so I'd be willing to give you the floor if you had something you wanted to contribute. Okay, I thought I heard Owen saying something. Esther, would you give us a synopsis before we go? Okay, so maybe Esther's not able to unmute her mic. You're on mute right now, Esther. So, Brother Harold, are you ready to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you could give us a few minutes, I think, to round out the evening would be a little talk about the current economic situation. And as former governor of the central bank, I think that deputy governor.
Hey, so you're making me a governor. That means a bigger pension for me. Anyhow,
Jesse, I'm back here if you want.
Just a short report on where we are on the ground. You know, last year we had a very torrid time in this economy. If you can imagine the economy as a cake divided into 5 big slices, last year we lost one of those slices. 1/5 of that cake went through the edges because of COVID. Now we are trying to recover this year. We're trying to build back the cake. In the first half of the year, we saw a little resurgence in the cake, and we're hoping that in the second half of the year, that we will build back more of this cake. The thing about it is that—
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but this 1/5, is that a particular sector you're speaking of, or you just mean a fifth of everybody's?
A fifth of that cake. A fifth of that, that's a big chunk. A fifth of that.
So you're saying that's the hotel industry, or are you saying all industries?
It was a construction, it was wholesale and retail, it was all kinds of things that went down last year. You know,
Okay.
last year was a bad year, so we're hoping that this year is a much better year. Only today, I read a report from WHO that is forecasting that COVID is going to be with us well into 2022. So let's not get too excited. But there are some things that we got to look out for in the last half of 2021 and into 2022. One is high unemployment. The unemployment figure was hovering around 20% earlier this year, and there's no expectation that it's going to get much better going forward. We're going to get some improvement in tourism. As we've seen, the tourism started to come back, but then the issue is they are concerned about the rate of vaccination in Barbados. So what was expected to be a bumper resurgence in tourism will be dampened now because people are coming from places where the vaccination rate is much higher than ours, and they are wary about coming to our country. But there's going to be a little resurgence in tourism GDP. So people working in the airline industry, people working in hotels, restaurants, people working in the duty-free sector, beach vendors, water sports people, taxi and hired cars and so forth, will see some uptick. We'll see some uptick, but not the kind of growth that we would want to really bring back tourism to where it was, say, back in 2019. The occupations that we think will thrive a lot in the short term will be people who work in IT, because a lot of people are working online. A lot of people are using Zoom, so the IT people will be in demand. And then we're also seeing that courier and delivery services will be in demand because a lot of people do not want to go back to the olden days where they have to go and pick up things themselves, pay bills themselves, and so on. So courier and delivery services could take off. One thing we'll see, of course, is rising prices. Prices start to rise already this year, and there is no sign that prices are going to ameliorate as we go into 2022, because we're getting increases in food prices. Wheat prices are going up, corn prices are going up, rice prices are going up, oil prices are rising, freight charges are rising, and all these things are going to be passed on to the consumer. And now we have to add the possibility of higher electricity rates if, God forbid, the Fair Trading Commission accedes to the request of Light and Power to increase electricity rates soon. So we are not going to see any major turnaround in the economy in the short term. And the other thing about that is that the government revenues are still weak. Government just did a lot of spending on COVID, the ash fall, the Hurricane Elsa, the freak storm, and unemployment benefits and so on. So that government is not in a position to keep bailing out the economy. The revenues are weak, taxation is down, people are not spending as much. So we can't really rely on government to bail out the economy. Government also can be relied on to absorb any more labor, except temporary labor like the bushing and that kind of thing. And added to that, we are expecting some slowdown in investment by the private sector. So all in all, we are saying that the economy is starting to pick up, but we are not going to get the expected growth that we would have had if we did not have this last spike, this third spike in the COVID virus. So
Brother Harold, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do feel like it's a tiny pet peeve of mine is one-sided perspectives from experts. So I would think that if you were the actual current governor of the central bank, you'd be telling us where there are pockets for immense growth, because I think someone who isn't a financial expert could easily tell us things are looking grim and it's going to be grim for a while. Where we come to you with the expectation we come to you with is the ability then to have that sort of eagle's view and understanding of where there are pockets of hopefulness and opportunity. Who are the big winners in this economy? And what are the tool sets that, if we equip ourselves with those tools, will make us the big winners? And do you feel like that there's a resonance there with me in terms of my expectation is that we should be able to look to governors and deputy governors, retired and present, for the answers to those sort of questions? Or do you think no, that there's no way you could answer that?
I can answer. Everybody, the big green shoot right now is green energy. The move to alternative energy has started. We are seeing it, for example, in the decision of the Transport Board to buy electric buses. All over the place, people are starting to put photovoltaic things on their roofs to reduce fuel costs, fuel import costs, because fuel import costs is one of the biggest balance of payments costs we have in this country. And it also feeds into other prices like food prices, transport prices, and so on. So everybody is talking about the biggest green shoot being green energy, Then there is a move to diversify within tourism. The welcome stamp idea was a good idea. We had some setbacks there, but apparently it is being renewed again. And there are more takers for it because Barbados is a nice place to work and live. So that is another possibility. We have been talking about agro-industry. Agro-industry, of course, depends on clean energy, cheap energy. And that is why people are concerned about the high electricity rates that may come on stream later on this year. There is also talk about diversifying within the financial services sector. We have been doing some things the same way for a long time, and our competitors are doing other things. For example, ships registration, they tell me going into ships registration can be a very lucrative thing for us. So there are things that are on the horizon, but will not take root in the short term. These are medium to long-term things, but there is hope.
Okay, so just to recap, green energy and
diversification of
financial services diversification
services within tourism.
Okay. Well, green energy is heavily regulated, right? So that's something that only the government could take advantage of, correct?
Yes, they will have to do that, yes.
Okay. And financial services instruments, again, heavily regulated. Only the government can take advantage of that green shoe, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, the government will have to do things with taxation and regulations and making things easier for people and so on, and really go after business in other subsectors apart from the ones that we are familiar with, like offshore banks and so on.
Okay, and so in fairness, we as individuals, those tools that we can use to put ourselves where there are pockets of growth would be, you mentioned tech services, courier services, and I think you mentioned niche hotel services.
Niche is within tourism. Niche within tourism itself.
Okay.
There are other things apart from sea sand tourism that we can go into. A big one now, for example, is cultural tourism. A lot of people who travel now travel to see old buildings, restored buildings, churches, monuments, and so forth. So we have to make sure that our cultural assets, our build cultural assets are in good shape. We maintain them and keep them in pristine condition.
Okay. Well, that is excellent. I appreciate that. I do think that it echoes something that's here on YouTube. What can we do right now to go about helping Barbados? How can we go about starting something that will help Barbados? And I do think that we have to be clear what new ventures are out there that only government, if government sets up a well-regulated and a procedurally dense set of guidelines, we can get into. And green energy isn't it, in my humble opinion, because that is heavily regulated, and the opportunities there will only be accessed if government sets out a well-regulated, well-explained, well-guided framework for getting from where we are to where we need to be to exploit those advantages. And I don't know that we have a track record that should make any reasonable Barbadian confident
But
in.
don't forget, this is supposed to be the new normal. They have to do that. But in our own houses, we can stop wastage of water, for example. We can, wherever possible, use photovoltaic instead of energy based. We can do those little things in our own houses.
Okay. And now when we're building our houses, maybe use a traditional style of home that maybe can be attractive then as a bed and breakfast to someone coming. Instead of building a modern American Central style home, maybe we build something that's modern but a throwback to an old Barbadian home, and has as a second income an attractive B&B to someone who wants to come and stay with you in a house that looks like one that was built in 1863. Just throwing that out there.
Even with construction standards, for example, we can go back to some of the traditional construction standards and build houses that are more resistant to hurricanes.
Yeah. I don't want to be a downer, but that again is going through government, which.
No, but there are standards that government should enforce.
Okay.
You know,
Esther, you're going to have a few minutes to encapsulate yours, and then we'll move on to Tyrone. But thank you so much, Brother Harold.
Okay, I just want to close by saying a few things. And the first one is that 1 2-hour or 1.5 session cannot do justice to any financial planning program. If it is something we're serious about, we're going to have to plan and have a series of them. Number 2, I want to say that the key to contentment in one finances is not the amount of money one makes, but rather a willingness to live within that amount. Because financial contentment has less to do with money and more to do with our attitudes and belief systems and the decisions that we make. Just as an example, you can have 2 persons working for the same amount of money, have the same situation in terms of mortgage, house, 1 child, or whatever, but one seems to be getting ahead and one isn't. And that is simply because of their, that's simply because of the different attitudes and belief systems and decisions that the persons made. So financial contentment will bring you, some sort of peace of mind. We need to make a plan and stick to it. A financial plan is essential regardless of your income. We need to avoid hire purchase. We need to use credit unions. And we were talking earlier about debt and so on. And I don't know how many of you are aware. And that's why I say that this thing can't be done in one session. That if you are a member of a credit union and you pass, most of the time your debt is insured. The credit union you can get double the amount of shares goes to your estate, and there are things like that happens within the credit unions. Avoid hire purchase, avoid debt unless it is for productive purposes. And when you do that, especially if you're a little older in age, but anytime, because death asks no questions about age, but you should try to get creditor life insurance wherever possible, especially if it's going to be a large debt, that you wouldn't leave debt for your children. And I don't know if I said it already, but teach your children financial literacy. It is very important that we teach our children about saving and everything to do with finance, where the money comes from, where it goes, and stuff like that. So that's how I would wrap up. But we really need to do more sessions on this topic because, as I said, 1, 2.5, we need to 3 now. Is it going into 3? Anyhow, 2.5 hours cannot do this justice. And when I do this program, I do it over 6 weeks.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Tyrone, your closing comments, please.
Thank you. And if I were to close, I would want to just close with this verse here from Timothy 1, Timothy 5:8. But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. And what I mean by that is that the scripture almost imposes on us an obligation to ensure that we provide for our own, for our household, and goes as far as to suggest that if you don't do that, you deny the faith. So it puts an obligation on us. And when I hear Harold's excellent recapture of the economy, two things come to mind. Despite the challenges that we have to face, we have to live. We're going to have to live with the unemployment. We're going to have to live with the restructuring. We're going to have to live with the COVID for a while. And while we're living, other things will happen. Death is a very real possibility. Disability and sickness are other possibilities. And these things have a way of impacting on our financial stability and independence. And as I said before, they can force us into begging or borrowing or stealing for our own survival. Finally, I would want people to understand that life is not easy. And where each of you are as I speak and conclude, you may have gotten there by a series of things, some within your control, some without. Some part of the mindset that Lucy spoke about. Some part of the cultural inhibitions that Barry made mention about in terms of generation and sharing information. Some may even, by what Fran made mention earlier, the desire to cope with whether it's a susu, whether it's a blessing, the ability to cope. But we are where we are today, and I think we need to start by forgiving ourselves, and that's where I want to conclude, because it begins with a mindset. I'm here now, so what do we do? As Cecile said before, let the forgiveness start with you where you are right now. Don't jump off a wall, don't kill yourself, don't be bitter. Forgive yourself. Let's change our attitude. While you're forgiving yourself, if there's anybody else that owe you anything, whatever it is, minor, try to forgive them as well. In fact, you almost don't have a choice. The forgiveness, the release, the freedom goes the other way. From me to you, and from you to me. And my friends, all in all, trust God. Because financial part of our lives, it is massive. It is all embracing. And if we lose control of it, we lose control of ourselves. As a matter of fact, that's why it is so much a problem, because we use it almost as an alternative to God. We can allow our finances to become idols and take us away from God. If we are rich and doing well, God becomes sometimes unimportant. When we think that we can have things, we control it, and then realize down the road, we really can't control it. So forgive ourselves, forgive others, trust God, even through our finances, and let Him take us to the next chapter of our life. Tomorrow, next week, next year, and beyond. God bless.
Amen. Amen. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. And what my prayer is that you've taken away from this that an understanding or an appreciation for how complex and condensed this intense this conversation is. There's macroeconomics and there's microeconomics. There's the current economy and the restrictions that we're facing. Their government efficiency and the need for government to do certain things that we can't do if government doesn't lay down a path for them to be done. But on the other hand, there are microeconomic issues. There are our own personal debt management and debt planning, our own personal income management and income planning, our own personal spending and planning. And in all of that, we're called to follow Jesus as well. So there's so much on the Christian plate because the realities are complex, and often the people explaining to us, educating us, aren't doing so from a faith perspective. I would hope that you would come away feeling like you've had an opportunity to discuss a very complex and dense issue in a corridor of faith, and that is something that you haven't always had access to. And so an appreciation that these struggles do not go away because we take up a life of faith, but that there are ways in the Word to address them. I want to thank very much Brother Harold for laying out the economic conditions and also for being generous to us by giving us some insights into where there are green shoots, I think was the term that he used. And so giving us some tools to equip ourselves going forward if we so desire. I want to thank Esther for talking about debt forgiveness and debt in general. Lucy for giving us great insight into how we need to control our thinking in order to be able to maneuver our microeconomic advantages. And of course, to Tyrone for especially that beautiful ending where we talk about essentially the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. Really in the scriptures, forgive our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us. And so it is a complex conversation to have. I think we've done a really good job of sharing with each other, and we've allowed ourselves to discuss it without having to solve anything. But hopefully what we've been able to do is to make real for you the challenges in understanding it, but also make real for you a path to a Christian understanding of the financial environment that we are in. I am looking for volunteers actually, I'll pass it back to the pastor who will send us away with prayer or close us as he sees fit.
Thank you very much, Cecile. Thanks so much to the panel for yet again a wonderful execution. First time we had this last year, conversation was riveting, and you've upped the ante, and all over YouTube and in this Zoom call, you can see the relevance of the information. And as has been discussed, Tyrone mentioned it long time. We can't just make this one thing. We got to do this again, right? And so you can stay tuned for that. And I just look forward to us navigating our way through this crisis in the way that Jesus would. If we say that we're following him, then we need to take stock of where we are at financially and what we're doing with our money. Ultimately, we want to be able to live generously. We want to be able to give generously. That's a goal, right? To be able to glorify God in our money by being able to bless people. We can't do that if we are reeling in debt. You cannot be generous if you are in debt. So this is the goal. And so I appreciate each and every person who contributed this evening. And I reached out to Barry. I don't know if he is still here. His audio was a little bit challenging when he was speaking. But Barry, are you still there? I would love for you to close. I think you did close last year too, if I recall. Are you still there? Yeah. Are you still there, Barry? We understand. If you are not right now. Okay, let's pray. Let's pray at this time, guys. Father in heaven, thank you so much for. Oh, okay. Barry, go ahead. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, so your memory is correct. I did close last night.
All right, there we go.
Dear Jesus, we thank you for this session. We thank you for your wisdom, dear Lord, that you have imparted onto us, dear Lord. We ask that you would lend it and give it to us freely, dear Lord, that we would be able to use it in our stewardship, dear Lord, whether it directly related to our finances and our money and how we use it, how we invest it, but also our time and also our talents, not just our money, but our physical talents. How do we invest it in your kingdom? How do we invest it in the earth to highlight your kingdom? We ask that you would help us to think of these things, help us to have a plan regarding how to invest in your kingdom, in your way of doing things, dear Lord. We ask that you would bless the persons on this call, the pastor especially. You know that the weight of leadership is heavy. We ask that you would help him to bear it with the grace that you abundantly supply. We also ask for the other persons on this call who are having financial challenges. We ask that you would send help to them, dear Lord, and that they would know it is you that has sent it. We also ask that for any person who is unwell, that they would feel better, that you would heal them. And we ask that you would dismiss everybody to the homes, although everybody's at the home already, but we would dismiss everybody to the home safely. We ask these things now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Barry. God bless you. Thanks so much, everybody. See you tomorrow. Listen, tomorrow is Follow Jesus in Your Youth. All right? Are you saying, oh boy, I can't, I got to check out? No, please. All right? For tomorrow only, everybody is young at heart. All right? So for tomorrow, everybody is young at heart. You come. But in doing so, invite those young people around you, man. Send them a WhatsApp message. Share the link for the stream. Let's have a whole bunch of young people on tomorrow. For the first time, Dolores is going to begin bringing the challenge for the night. We have some really good songs and activities you are going to enjoy tomorrow night. Of course, we got to bring another quiz. I hope you're paying attention tonight. A lot of material to draw from this evening. So you'll be there 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. God bless you guys. Good night, everybody.
Before we go, Saturday is the business showcase, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. We're going to be on the shady side of the church. So all those businesses we were highlighting today are going to have an opportunity to introduce themselves to you. We're taking advantage of the fact that we are on acres and acres of property. We're going to be socially distanced. We're going to be sanitized. We're going to be waving to each other across the parking lot, but we're going to be giving a lot of businesses. And I had no idea how many people had begun businesses in the past year at Berean. So we're going to get a chance to see some of them in the flesh. So please come down to the church between 1 and 5 on Saturday. And if you have t-shirts, they're there at the church, whether it was first or second batch, the t-shirts are there and ready for you.
Thank you, Cecile. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.